Hey.
Welcome back to the Spiritual Uplevel Podcast. I'm your host, Jeri Cristine, and today we have one of my favorite people. He, by default, is one of my best friends because he's married to one of my best friends, and he's also just a fantastic human, and I'm really excited for you to be here today. This is Dr. Steve Hruby, owner of Kaizen Progressive Health. He is a chiropractor of 24 years. Amazing at what he does. He's also super passionate about longevity and has spoken at some of the largest longevity conferences in the world. And so today we're going to talk about that, like all the things that you and I are passionate about, Steve. So thank you for being here today.
Yeah, it's wonderful to be here. I'm so excited for this, Jerry.
Well, let's begin by tell us just a little bit about who you are, and then we'll dive deep into what it is that you're doing and that you're passionate about.
Yeah. So yeah, interesting. I realize more and more how interesting my life has been up until now and continues to get more interesting. But yeah, I'm 24 years in the health field, chiropractor, absolutely still practicing chiropractor, absolutely love what I do, very passionate about what I do. I have kind of an interesting background in terms of just I grew up, both my parents are PhD scientists, like hard scientists. My father in chemistry. He's literally one of the leading researchers in the world in peptide chemistry, my mom in physics. So I have a very like scientific upbringing in terms of how I was raised. Spiritually, because I think we're going to talk some about spirituality. I was, raised Catholic. I always say like Catholic light. In terms of my upbringing with that, about 15 years ago, professionally, well, actually personally, I got really interested in longevity and biohacking. Really got personally interested for myself. I've just always been passionate about health and wellness. And when I started learning the science around longevity, I was blown away by all the breakthroughs that have been going on, and people literally talking about living forever and keeping the body alive forever and all these things. And there was like real science behind this and real PhDs, and it got me super excited. I personally started taking the journey of just, I had good health already, I would say, but I've been able through different biohacking and stem cells and all kinds of cool stuff that we may talk about today or not. Started doing these things on myself. And as I did them on myself, just the way I practice what I do, I started teaching my clients around this because I'm largely not just a chiropractor. The way I practice chiropractic is I want to give people the tools to get the best results. So with that, I started this longevity journey. In the last couple of years now, I have developed what I call my it's Blueprint to Being Superhuman. It's an online platform. Maybe actually by the time this is going out to the public, it's been on beta the last 2 years. So I've just been having my own private clients as we've worked out the kinks and I've gotten the program better, but that will be released and I would invite all your audience to it because I'm really proud of this platform and I really see the way it changes lives. And the way now I'm through my teaching on my longevity teaching is really just the healthy lifestyle choices that will, bring you to longevity. And a lot of people are interested in longevity, um, for all the cosmetic, like beauty reasons. That's a great reason to be into longevity. And there's a lot of cool things that you can spend a lot of money on to get some results there. Ultimately, those results and how well those things work are going to be based on fundamentally the lifestyle choices that you make. So if you're going to invest the money, like take the time and you don't have to do everything perfectly in life, but start doing more things right and less things wrong, and you're going to get the best results from those things. And you're going to live a much happier, joyful life, which is ultimately, I think, what we all want anyway.
Yeah, for sure. I was talking to somebody just this morning about I heard or read somewhere that scientists believe that people today will be living to 130 will be pretty common with just the resources that we have today. And she said, I don't want to live to be 130. And I said, well, if you're healthy and like you still have your mental facilities, wouldn't you want to? And I actually want to start there. Like, let's just go straight into the spirituality and we'll circle back around to the how to and why and stuff. But one of my questions with longevity has always been like, do you really want to keep the body alive forever? Like, you and I have both had some really like deep mystical experiences. And I love that place that I go to when the body is not a factor, right? And so I kind of think like, well, one day, do I want to live forever? But I want to be as healthy as possible during that process. So like, what's your thoughts on that? Do you want to live forever?
Let's I mean the
In
true
the
answer to that is I don't know. But let me give you some thought experiments I've done along this journey because those really are the fundamental early questions if people are going to look at this stuff seriously, should be
Yeah.
asking yourself. Uh,
Yeah.
so I think a lot of people when they first start there, and this is myself included, would think you vision being 80, 90, 100, 130 as like what like being in a place that like you're alive, but you're mentally and maybe physically suffering. Okay, that
Mhm.
is not what longevity is, and the way I'm defining it is you're living long, but you're in a good, healthy state. So do a thought experiment there. I mean, if take away you have no connection to whatever age you are right now, do you want to die tomorrow? And if yeah, right now your answer is no. And right now my answer is no. Do I want to die a year from now? Do I want to die 20 years from now? Right now my answer to all those questions are no. I have a lot to live for.
Yeah.
Um, if I just magically feel the same way I feel right now and I'm 130, well, the answer is the same right now. I want to live to be another 20 year. It might be different incentives. It might be different ways that I'm growing. I'm excited for life. It might not just be that I'm like excited to see what happens to my children 20 years from now, but now I'm talking about my great grandchildren, what's happening with them 20 years from now, and I want to be a part of that. So if I feel that way at 130 and my body is exactly where it is now, I'd be very happy if I'm 130 and I'm exactly where I am now. I'm lucky I have that kind of health at 53, but it could be better, And so to me, the answer would be yes, I want to keep on going on.
Yeah.
If let's say I'm now doing the thought experiment and I'm 130 now, I have my health and whatever. I mean, I don't know where I'll be mentally but my what's important if I'm going to have longevity at that point is I am still growing mentally for me, and I'm still feeling connection. And to me, part of connection is spirituality. And those are the things that I mean, to me, my thought around those things right now is it's limitless how much we can grow in those ways.
Yeah.
And part of my excitement for life is that right now. So
Yeah, that's interesting because you're right. Like, we really don't have any idea how we can grow in even connection to source, to creator God, because we've never been able to do that in our bodies. And even I think to like the Bible, in the beginning, it says that people live to be 900 some years old, they lived to be hundreds of years old. And then there would be a day when God took them, and so like we don't really have, because of our limitations, we really have no idea what it might be like. And I think when people think of longevity in the beginning, they just think of like physically, but we really have no idea how much we could learn, how much we could explore in connection to spirituality, other people, ourselves. And I think that this, life, my personal belief is that this is like um I don't know, almost like a training, testing, like a place to learn ultimately how to be connected to our creator. And it might be an interesting experiment to see what happens when you have so much time. I do time in air quotes because there's really no such thing as time.
right.
Quantum physicists are proving. We really have no idea what we can achieve in a in that all of that time. So that's interesting. I'm glad we
Yeah.
went straight there because now my mind is just moving because I always thought, like you said in the beginning, like, oh, do I really want to live that long? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know about
Yeah, it is. And it's fun. And it should be fun to start thinking this way.
yeah.
Um, these are the right questions to be asking yourself. And if, my experience, the people who are in this state of asking these questions are in this state of expansion, consciously. Um, for me, again, what I see with people is that, and I want to talk a little bit about actually how I define spirituality and part of the way I'm teaching spirituality, because it's actually it's for my teaching, it's very important. And I think I kind of have a mission to reach out and touch a lot of people who I think have a lot of the same thoughts around spiritualities and maybe misconceptions and misdefinitions around spiritualities. I do. I had just somebody like peek through the window. But
It's okay.
um, um, so with that, so I think
Explain that.
one way I want to talk about spirituality and the way I teach it is through this level of connection. So let me step back a step, talk about that, and it comes back to everything that we're talking about right now. So in longevity science and research, they have these things called blue zone studies. Blue zone studies are they study these groups of people all over the world who have a high population of people who live to be 100 plus. And they've done these large, massive studies, and they find these correlations of what's similar between these different, from diet to, just different lifestyle choices of what these people have in common. Because in many ways, they're very different cultures that these people grow up in. Um, the number one thing correlated with these people who have super longevity, and they live for a long time, and they also live very happy, joyful lives. And I will tell you, there's a direct correlation with living a long time and actually being happy and joyful. So if you do have a goal to live to be 130, part of the things you need to be going after, and it would only make sense, is I want to be happy and joyful. And if you think about coming back to what we first talked about, do I really want to? Like a lot of us just, again, we're thinking, and some people are in a miserable place in their life right now. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, none of us have 100% joy, and maybe we're not designed to. Like, there's always a give take, but a lot of people just aren't happy right now. Now, probably have a feeling, hopefully, they have that feeling of they know that's there and they should be going for that and they want that. I think the people who are listening to this podcast are the type of people who are searching for that right now. But what we find, so happiness and joy, but what we find with health is connection is by far the biggest correlation that they find in these groups. Connection with other community and other people in their community. And so they have strong social connections. Okay, if you think about it from a health standpoint, humans are social creatures, right? From the day we're born, we are relying on each other, to help. To no human does it alone. Let's put it that way, right? We're socially connected, um, and a lot of people. I mean, just like food can be toxic, social connection can be toxic too. And a lot of us, from family to personal experiences, have had a lot of maybe toxicity in our life. And, you will see mostly in the way I think you and I talk about spirituality is a lot of times it's a journey of releasing all of that trauma and toxicity in our body. Again, I'm going to come back. This is the number one thing we find correlated with people who live to be super long. Is there kind of a blood test that tests for this? Are your doctors asking about you this? No, there's no way right now for us to directly test this in your system. So the health community is largely not talking about this because they have no way to test it and they have no drug or medication to give you that's going to like solve it. The drug and medication is strengthening your human connection. And and the other correlation that they find that's so strong is a spiritual connection. Now, spiritual connection, that can mean so many different things. And we have such a hard time, and I think it's important for us to like, from God, creator, source. When people are using these words, it's kind of, and I think they're all fine words to use. That's your representation. For me, I'm very much like source. That feels good to me. I have, I mean, I would say I was raised Catholic, very Catholic light. I mean, I've studied religions, I've studied philosophy, I've always been interested in that. Um, I mean, at one time, I would definitely say would define myself as an atheist. I would now define myself more as agnostic. Um, but man, I will also I would do like the atheist arguments all day long because I definitely, this is me, have seen, just like everything can be toxic, spirituality be very toxic for many people. Not spirituality, but actually religion be very toxic for
Sure.
people. Um, and so my brothers and sisters who are religious and are, having these great spiritual journeys that aren't about like doing harm to other people, they're not following the dogmatic practices that religion often sees. Um, I want to teach those people and all learning all these skills too. But I am just because I had so many people I love, I'm very sensitive to the dogmas of these different spiritual, religions, let's say, that can hurt people. And for me, not being a person who actually had that experience and always having a strong connection to spirituality, and not really realizing it and probably kind of disconnecting myself from spirituality, the reason that happened to me is largely because I had the impression to be spiritual, you had to be religious.
Yeah.
Um, and I think there's millions and millions of people out there like myself who are really missing out on spiritual growth because they think actually they've had to like disconnect themselves from whatever religious experience they have. And so I want to really differentiate that you can be spiritual and not be religious. That also means you can be spiritual and religious, and it is an important aspect of your health and your longevity.
Wow. And I agree. And I think that's one of the reasons I do this podcast is to encourage people to find their version of spirituality, whether
Yeah.
it's religion or something else, as long as you're feeling connected. And you're speaking my language because I have lived away from my best friends for 15 years now, and I'm really missing that connection. And I know that when it just makes so much sense when you're with your people, you feel differently than when you're separated. And our world is going the other way.
Yeah.
They talk about it all the time. Social media, games, our kids are so wrapped up in their iPads and their cell phones and stuff. And that's concerning. I think it's concerning to everybody. It doesn't matter if you're spiritual or not. Everybody is saying this is that there's definitely concern with our lack of connection and people are craving it. And you're saying that's a huge part of longevity. So, but yet people even in the longevity community aren't necessarily talking about it or in the scientific community. So what are we going to do about that?
Yeah. So I love this conversation. Um, so you talk about technology, and one of the things I'm teaching now in my course is everything that you're talking about. First of all, number one I'm teaching is the awareness for people to see and the real science that's coming out of. I think we all intuitively, instinctively now can see how much harm this is doing, um, to our children. There's a great book, The Anxious Generation, that really talks about this. If a lot of your audience has probably heard about it, that's a good place to start to understand the science that's coming out around this. And these are things that are affecting us. I will tell you, these technologies, what they're doing is they're affecting our nervous system and specifically our autonomic nervous system, and they're triggering on a constant basis stimulation of our fight or flight nervous system, okay, our sympathetic nervous system. So it's just very slowly pushing us all into this anxiety, stress, fight or flight. which is biologically part of us, but was really meant when the lion, jumps out from the bush, like that's when that's supposed to go in full effect. And we're getting that triggered every day. And it's a drug. We're craving it. You know, I got my phone right here. I am no exception. I'm on it too much. I know the science better than most, and I know what it's doing to me, and I know it's doing to my children. Um, and it's also not going away. So we really need to, and what I want to teach is the tools of, how we manage that. Because this is great in so many ways too, and can be a great means. And we're on technology talking to each other, and there's hopefully, thousands of people listening to us getting a positive influence here. I think a good way to look at that stuff, again, think about it as a nutrient. Communication, connection is a nutrient that we need to survive. Okay. Just like, food is a nutrient that we die without. And literally it is for us. And just like Doritos is a junk food, it feels like a nutrient and there's some nutritional value to it. Social media is like a candy bar, in terms of human connection. There is some nutritional value there, but it's also got a lot of toxicity and harm. And first of all, we just have to empower ourselves. You have to be aware of that. The algorithm should not be in control of you. You want to start taking steps to be in control of your algorithm. Your environment is you. What you put in your body is you. What the people you hang around becomes you, and vice versa. And your social media, and if you and I look at each other's, Instagram, we probably are in two different universes. And that's causing a more disconnection all the time with us. So I'm not saying there's a simple solution, but awareness, and then, there's just different strategies you can start to minimize the effects on these. And then there's strategies, nutrient strategies you need to implement to be like, hey, I'm going to make it like once a week, I'm going to lunch with a friend. Maybe you're distance friendly, but once a week, I'm like on the phone hour with one of my people here in Arizona. I'm making a commitment to myself to that. And, I'm going to be visiting more or whatever it is. So these are all things that you can start doing, the audience can start doing, get these things. I'm sorry, somebody's here like banging on my window. Give me 1 second, Jeri.
Here it is. That's fine.
Yes.
Yeah, so you were talking about how we need to commit to connection, just like it's a nutrient for our body. And that makes so much sense. I wanted to ask you, because I've seen those blue zone studies as well. And the other aspect that I remembered is that the people are moving their bodies.
Yeah.
So I remember like one of the communities in Japan, the 100-year-old person is still sitting on the floor because they don't sit on cushy couches. And so they're getting up and down, many, many times in a day. And so their body is more fluid and moving.
Yeah.
And I know that you are passionate about that as well.
Yeah. So movement so there's 5 pillars. This is
Okay.
that I teach for health and longevity. Okay. Movement is one. And there's a lot of different things. I mean, we're designed to move. And again, you can just go back to our evolutionary biology. I mean, our ancestors moved all the time. They didn't have to schedule workouts to the gym or Pilates class or, all the things that we do that because they were moving to find food and moving not to be food. Okay. We live in a very different environment, but we are fundamentally designed to move. There's a lot of different aspects of that. There's movement, there's your endurance, there's strength, there's balance, so these are different nuances within the same thing. But absolutely, movement is, we're designed to move, and it's part of your health and well-being, not just your physical health, but your mental, psychological health. Another pillar is, we talked about nervous system, just nervous system. Everything runs through our nervous system. specifically our autonomic nervous system, which is our fight or flight, and then our sympathetic, our rest and restore, sympathetic, parasympathetic. We're all in imbalance. We're way too much fight or flight, and we're imbalanced in our rest and restore. Rest and restore is another, which is predominantly like we need to sleep. Sleep is fundamentally our superhuman, is a superpower for all humans. And so you have to get sleep and get that right. Otherwise, that pillar will crush and destroy you. And then there's your gut health, which is where like nutrition falls into place. But you know, we can talk all day long about nutrition and all these different philosophies. Fundamentally, it all comes down to your gut. And if your gut's going to be healthy, that means you're getting the right things into your body nutrition wise. So focusing on gut health is really where it's at in terms of longevity.
I've heard of some studies where they're saying that the gut is almost like a second brain, and it actually might be more important than our brain, what we think of as our brain. It might
Yeah,
actually be
I
the
teach this in the course. So there's a connection, and we could have a whole podcast about this, and
yeah,
maybe
we could. You might have to
there's a
do that.
connection between your gut, your brain, and now the newer stuff is your heart. That is mind blowing when you start seeing the science and the connection, and it's really an expansive way that you will view your body and your health in a whole new way when you start learning about what you're bringing up. So I'd love to come back and talk about that soon.
I have so many questions around that, so I'm definitely going to schedule
Yeah,
that.
let's that'll be our cliffhanger for another episode because
Yeah.
it is a conversation that's would take at least an hour to really do it justice.
Yeah, it's big. It's big.
Yeah.
So, um, where does somebody begin? Because I know um, I always say, look at your social media, what you're interested in, right? I have some interest in longevity because you'll see that on my social media, and I get a little overwhelmed by it. Like, take
Yeah.
this supplement, eat this, don't eat this, all these different things. And it's like, oh my gosh, I just need somebody to do a whole blood panel and tell me exactly what to do. Like, where do you
Yeah.
start?
Yeah, well, you're doing the perfect pitch for my blueprint to be human.
Good. You're
Which
welcome.
is great because thank you. There's a need for it out there. Yeah, where to start? I will just tell you fundamentally where to start is in the present, in the now of where you're at now. Um, and you know, to bring it all back to what we talked about at the very beginning of this conversation is if you really are interested in longevity, you need to you want to be having the best life now. Now is the building block for the future, and and always will be. And the fundamental, where that all begins is that you are in control and you want to be self-aware of making the choices that make sense for you. When I teach lifestyle choices, the right lifestyle choices for you and for me are different. And that's not to say there'd probably be like 95% overlap with that. But there's millions of things that will benefit your health and well-being. You can spend millions of dollars, you can spend $50, you can spend nothing on this stuff, and get some really fundamental results. So these are the things that we want to teach. I will tell you in terms of fundamentally where we all need to start. It's all with our nervous system. We experience everything through our nervous system, and we're being consciously, unconsciously triggered in our nervous system all the time. So the very first thing I teach everybody is we got to balance out your nervous system. Being grounded is a tool that we all need. No matter, again, grounded is a word that gets used a lot in spirituality, and it's great, and it should. It's really important, but you don't have to be spiritual at all, actually, to understand how important it is to be grounded. What grounded means is you have a balanced nervous system at that moment. I'm going to tell you physiologically from a doctor's perspective what that means. What is actually happening in everybody who's grounded is they have a calm, balanced nervous system. Okay. How many of us have a calm, balanced nervous system? Let's be honest. And what percentage of our day? Okay. We all, and you've learned a lot of tools. You've had people on here who teach tools. There's all things that we can learn to balance ourselves and ground ourselves. And these are tools that we have with us 24/7. Your breath is the most easy, fundamental tool. So breath work, breathing exercises, great place to start. Meditation practices, these mindful practices, things that you can use to calm your nervous system is the place to start. Um, so that is the fundamental thing that I think everybody needs. I think you asked about like human connection and where do you start with that? So I will say like the fundamental thing everybody needs is be able to, because again, a lot of people, what I've found now working with people when it comes to connection is the things that hold people back from human connection. Um, it's very present in people, and there's hundreds of different things. But past toxic relationships, 100 different things that can happen there, right? People have had these experiences, and so again, people being able to first be able to connect themselves with them. When it comes to connection, you have to be able to connect to yourself first of all, and that's again to me, I'll link back to like being able to ground yourself. I mean, if you're not comfortable just sitting there with yourself, that is a sign that you're having problems just even being connected to yourself and grounding yourself. So that's where we all had to fundamentally start. If you can't connect to yourself, how are you going to connect to another person, right?
And
So
I think
that's where
so
I would
many
say,
people aren't comfortable doing that,
yeah,
which is why we're so preoccupied, why the social media and binging Netflix and things like that, because and I know this was me before. I didn't want to be sitting by myself. I didn't want to be alone with myself, and I wanted to ask you this too, talking about me before. I want to just encourage people because this journey for me of becoming comfortable with myself, becoming grounded, it all began because I was so out of whack that, I had early menopause at 35. Like my body was literally shutting down. And I just realized, like, if I continue on this path, I'm going to be one of those people that have a heart attack by the time they're 49. Now I'm 49, almost 50, and I feel better than I felt 20 years ago,
yeah,
and a lot of it was some physical stuff, but a lot of that was just that connection with myself, releasing old toxic beliefs and thoughts, and getting grounded within myself. And I can just imagine that there's somebody listening who's thinking, oh my gosh, like I'm so sick already. Like, how do I turn this ship around? But you can, right? Our bodies are amazing and they want to be healthy and like anyone can pretty much turn that ship around and do these things that you're saying, such simple steps to start in the now, and it
yeah,
can transform the trajectory, right?
yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, wherever, if you're alive, your health can only move wherever you're at. You can only move one or two directions, and if we're alive, somewhere between, you know, point one, zero's dead, and a 10. And I would argue nobody's a perfect 10. And if you're zero, you're not here anymore. And you can only go wherever you're at, whether you're 4.2 or 9.7. You can only go one or two directions. You're either going up or down at any given moment. And nobody ever goes just perfectly in a straight line either way. There's things that pull up. So if you understand that, first of all, and you have the belief in that, no matter if you're alive, you can change things. Um, Fundamentally, your mindset is what's going to, and your beliefs are what's going to determine your ability to make the decisions that are right or wrong for you. So it begins with mindset and beliefs. And I bet you could talk all day long. I'd love to hear your story. Maybe you've shared it on this already. I know some of your story already. of, you changing your mindset beliefs, because that's going to then allow you to then change the choices that you make.
Mhm.
Um, this is it's so important. Again, here it comes back to human connection. You know, put yourself around people who are going to inspire you and have, like, 20 years ago, they were in a different place. This is why you're so inspired to come on and do this and share your story, because Jeri, there's millions of people out there with their own stories, but they're in the same situation you were 20 years ago, of just like they are not moving in the right direction, and usually they're disempowered and they feel helpless, so put yourself around people who are on that mission to help people like you, if you're one of those person. And then you may also then one day turn into you and me, who are now the people who and now I want to go out and inspire more people, one person at a time. I'm so impassioned just to help people have better lives. I mean, the biggest tragedy to me that I've just seen working with thousands of people, and when I realized this, is just like how many people aren't, the bottom line, yeah, I want to help people get out of pain and discomfort and all things. But what's the point if you're not like enjoying life? And what you
Yeah.
realize is the people who are enjoying life are the people who are creating pain and manifesting all these things for themselves. And emotionally not having a good life. And a lot of times people who are not emotionally having a different life, almost always it's correlated with they don't have good relationships in their life, because we're supposed to be there for each other we're all going to have hard times in our life. I know hard things are going to happen to me in the future. You know, who am I going to rely on? The people that I am connected to, that I know are going to be there for me and are going to pick me up. Okay. Make sure that I'm like thinking about things right, supporting me. Like, this is why I need human connection now when I'm having amazing life, because I'm going to need that. We need it. We all need it. And people don't have this right now.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be that way. That's the beautiful thing, is we know it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah. Steve, I just love that you're talking about this, because from a scientific perspective and a doctor perspective, you don't, like you said in the beginning, you don't hear that, but that's really where it starts from. And I'm definitely going to have you back to talk some more in depth on some of these different points. Um, in the longevity community, are there people that really think that we can be alive in the body forever?
Oh yeah. I mean, the longevity community is a very interesting community. There is all kinds of different people, and I mean, it's even sad to me because I've seen some of this get very I mean, everything gets pulled into
Or
politics nowadays. I mean, but there are people who want to upload. Longevity communities, a very broad spectrum of people. Let's put it that way. So there are people who are super techie, and they're just like, we're going to download your consciousness, and that's how we live forever. There are, highly, highly spiritual people. I mean, there's so many PhD and science geeks that involve this. There's your, super bros and people who are just like the most beautiful people you've ever seen. And they're just and having the funnest lives. And they're just like, I want to have this life forever, because they're doing big things in the world. Um, so there's just such a spectrum of people. It is an interesting crowd, but there's no like little like easy way to explain like the people who are involved in longevity, because
sure.
they're all over the place. So if you see something that like they're trying to like look at these scary longevity people and like whatever, it's like, that's some subset, like 5%, because it's a very broad spectrum of every walk of life of people who are into longevity and going for it for different reasons.
Wow. I have a friend who I listens to this podcast, so he's going to hear this, but he always told me from the day I met him that he's not going to die, he's going to upload.
Mhm.
And he drinks no water. He drinks energy drinks all the time. Like, dude, you better get to work on start that process.
Yeah. And
Um,
there's a lot of people in this world. I mean, I teach the health and lifestyle stuff. It's so funny because a lot of these, especially like big science people, they're just like they have the worst lifestyle choices, and they're just like, well, we can hack all of that stuff through science and whatever. And I'm like, I would just tell you there that's not, at least at this point, that's we're far away from that at best, and that's not the way our bodies thrive. There are just again fundamental things, and you know when you do them and when you don't do them that your body's thriving or not thriving. And listen, I like to go out and have fun and do a lot of things, and especially it's funny when I eat out. Like that's usually when I'm like, I always say I eat like really clean 90% of the time and 10% so I can like enjoy myself the 10% of the time. And I enjoy eating clean, but like I don't even worry about when I eat like a piece of chocolate cake or whatever because I know I'm in balance that I can do that and my body can process it all. But it's funny because that usually happens when I'm out. So it's like the people who like know me and follow me and I'm out with them to dinner and they're like, what the hell are you eating? And all this stuff. And I'm like, it's funny. So
Well, I think that's an important point though, Steve, is that you know, if you're not enjoying it, what's the point?
yeah,
Like the healthier you become, the more that you enjoy that. When you aren't healthy and you think about eating healthy, it maybe doesn't sound enjoyable.
yeah,
However, the more healthy you become, the more enjoyable that it is.
yeah,
And your body just starts to reject some of those things. However, there are things like chocolate cake that are just good. Like I have some friends in the spiritual community who laugh at me because I love pizza. Like literally in one of my very spiritual journeys, I literally God was like, dude, you love living because pizza. And I was like, I love it so much. And like I don't want to give that up. There's healthier ways to do pizza, right? But every now and then I just want that. And what's the point if you're constantly like restricting yourself and it isn't enjoyable? Then I think is where that becomes like fear-based. Like they want to live forever because they're afraid to die. And I think that's not good either. That's probably where, like you're saying, you have to really work on that connection with yourself because there shouldn't be fear in it, I think.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, my fundamental thing that I teach in my superhuman course is like life is for living, and I want you to live life to the fullest. That's the foundation to what I'm teaching everybody, right? Um, and yes, I think there's some misconceptions about like, I mean, my goal of life is to get the most out of life, and that means to have fun and do things. It's my pizza. I like pizza too. Is milkshakes, man. I'm not giving up milkshakes and whatever, and I get great joy of it. So we can and should all have these things. And it's really important. And I will just tell you, you can have all those things, and that's a truly like balanced life. I think that misconception of like if I'm living forever, I'm doing everything perfect, and I'm like whatever. That's actually not what it's about. But
Yeah.
all I'm saying too is it can't be the reverse that you can just do freaking everything wrong and think you're gonna like get
Sure.
things out of life.
Sure. Absolutely. Well, okay, so we've already determined that we're going to have you back to go into more depth on a lot of these different things. We're coming up on our time for today. I ask every guest two questions, and the first one is, what is one book that you recommend that our listeners read?
Oh, well, I'm gonna go with the anxious generation because we talked about that earlier. It pertains to what we're talking about. Um, so I'll just give you the brief overview. Jonathan Haidt wrote this book. I think it was the number one selling book of last year. Literally, so you may have heard this book, but it really talks about the science that's coming out right now of why our children specifically have so much more mental disorder than any other generation before. That's where the anxiety is a big one that we hear about. They're self-harming more. It's really shocking the data that's coming out. And I will just tell you like what you will learn in that book, and Jonathan Haidt's such a good at communicating this stuff, is not just pertaining to our children, but it pertains to us too, because everything that the studies show with children is helping to us. It's happening to them in a bigger way because their neurology is not fully developed, so they're much more vulnerable to this stuff. But realize when you read that book, you are and your parents are just as vulnerable as our children are. It's just not wiring our brain as fast as it is theirs.
I'm definitely going to read that book that,
Yeah.
thinking about my
And I'm going
own.
to tell you the flip side to that because there's a point in there, the other side of that too, that he shows through the sciences. One is, again, what tech's doing to our children and their mental health, but also what we're doing to our children as parents in the real world, which is he has a saying like we're under parenting our kids online and we're over parenting in the real world.
Mm.
Um, so there's some really good information in there about too how we think we're protecting our kids in the real world and we're not giving them autonomy and nobody can walk down the block without somebody with them and watching them and we don't let our boys ride their bikes off the roof and do crazy things like we did and in some ways we're protecting them but we're actually doing them more harm on the whole and it's also something those two in combination is what's the formula of what's causing our kids.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's definitely you. I'm getting all fidgety. I'm like, I need to read that book for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
No, I can see that. Wow. Okay. So
Okay. There's the
lots
book
to
answer.
think about today. So my last question is, what is one thing that you wish everyone in the world knew?
Ooh. Um, I wish everybody knew that they are 100% in control of where their life's headed. If they empower themselves to learn how much in control they are, you can create, I'll say whatever life you want, but you can create a life that you want. And it might seem like that's out of your control, but if everybody actually knew that they could learn the right things and make the right choices, and really felt that empowerment, then people would start doing those things and seek those things out. And I would want everybody to know that just like you can create a life that you want.
That's so good because people have given away so much of their power.
Yeah.
Even like I know scientists are starting to discover that even like your genes, what you're born with, they're not actually what controls you. It's whether or not you turn those genes on or off. And that for me, learning that was so empowering. Um,
Yeah.
Steve,
My very first course, and that I teach in my classroom, is what you just taught. It's about DNA and epigenetics, and what you're talking about is your epigenetics. And
yeah,
epigenetics actually control about 70%, of your genes, and it's all based on lifestyle choices
yeah.
and the stuff that we teach. It's in your control.
Fascinating. I
Yeah.
love that. So, Steve, if somebody wanted to reach out to you or find out about the course that you offer soon online, how do they do that?
Yeah, go to my Dr. Steve Hruby. My last name is spelled HRUBY.com. I think you'll have it listed in the notes. And click on there. And we will put you on our list for people who are interested in the course because we are, like I said, I'm doing one more iteration of my course with my beta group, which is just people I personally know now. And then the plan is to release this to invite everybody into that. So you can
I'm
get on.
really excited for that. I mean, you can see how passionate you are. And I love that you said you've been beta testing it for 2 years because it shows how much passion and time and energy you're putting into making sure that everything is correct and it's as effective as possible. So thank you for doing
Yeah.
that. I look forward, I'm going to be part of that next group. So I look forward to that.
Yeah, I
And
can't wait to have you there.
yeah, thank you so much, Steve. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and one of the points you made that I want to reiterate is that life is worth living to the fullest, and
Yeah.
you can do that, and you can enjoy it. And thank you so much. We'll be having you back.
Bye, Jerry.
Bye.